hurt him with knives, bullets, and explosives. Now Mark lay relaxed in the desert, letting the soothing rays of the afternoon sun soak into his skin. Once again Mark saw the river of blood and knew he had to test his will to continue the battle. Barrels of blood had been spilled by his hand. Uncounted hitmen, mobsters, mafia soldiers and dons, swindlers, murderers, crooked cops, and politicians had felt the deathly scythe in his vengeful hand. But it was all bad blood he had spilled, all devil's blood. He tested again his right, his will to continue, to certify himself once more as a self-appointed deathly Robin Hood, to bring some form of justice to those who could not or would not defend themselves. Mark remembered the sweet black-haired girl he had loved so deeply, Professor Haskins' niece, whom he had met at the stronghold. They were to be married. But in their investigation of Mark's background, they had stumbled into a big heroin smuggling operation of the Los Angeles Mafia. The Mafia hoodlum had reacted in typical fashion and ordered her car run off the road high in the mountains. She was driving, and Mark was with her. The car smashed down a steep cliff, and Mark was thrown free. Then the car burst into flames, burning the girl alive where she was trapped in the wreckage. Mark had vowed eternal vengeance against the Mafia and all forms of crime. He could not stop now. He could not bring her back from her funeral pyre. He had to go on to the next target. There was no way he could go back. Every law enforcement agency in the land had his description, thought they had his fingerprints, knew he was wanted, armed, and said he was desperately dangerous. Yet he had never fired a shot at an honest law officer. He never would. This, too, had been a part of his vow. When the police hunted him, he deftly eluded them. He always would. He would continue. He must. He was committed with his entire force. David Red Eagle in the stronghold in the old borax mine, Professor Haskins acting as his G2, mapping the intelligence, tapping his own private sources of contacts throughout the academic world. The rotating treasure chest of dirty money he had liberated from time to time from the Mafia and other criminal elements, where there was no chance to get the money back to its rightful owners. He had taken well over $3 million from criminals, and he used it all to fight them. Now he stretched in the hot desert sun, letting the heat bore into his tanned skin. He lay in the sand, naked except for shorts, his feet hard again from running over the sand in a continuation of the tightly organized schedule David Red Eagle insisted upon, so Mark would remain physically tough, mentally quick. He could run for 8 hours through the blistering desert heat and be ready to fight at the flick of a horny toad's head. Mark sat up and eyed the stronghold, 100 yards ahead of him. It had been built into the desert mine where borax once had been extracted and hauled away with 20 mule teams. Now only the natural rise of a small hill and a cliff 30 feet high marked the stronghold. A casual hiker would see nothing unnatural in the landscape, even if he walked directly over the dwelling. Delicate slot windows appeared as thin chinks high in the cliff. Cactus growth hid air vents. A section of the cliff pivoted inward, revealing a garage that housed 2 cars and a pickup truck. Mark stood easily and jogged to the small door, pushed the hidden latch, and entered the stronghold. His presence was at once recorded by a remote-controlled TV camera, and his identity was checked by a voice-print security monitor. He moved quickly up the steps to the professor's third-floor study. On Mark's desk lay a 3-page report. Mark picked it up and studied the first page. It was a newspaper story. Dateline, Washington. Copley News Service. The United States government has taken seriously threats by terrorist groups to redouble their efforts to make attacks during the bicentennial years seem minor in comparison with those planned now. The working group of the President's Cabinet Committee to Combat Terrorism is known to have in operation a communications network linking all agencies that are involved in attempting to prevent such violence. Francisco Martinez, who identified himself as a labor relations consultant and researcher for Puerto Rican industries,